Okay, take two.
Hi everyone, I'm Michele Gusdorff. I'm a teacher at the Bethel Talmud Torah in Phoenix. And today we're going to be learning how to make some delicious charoset recipes from around the world. We have 4 different recipes from 4 different regions. We have one that the Sephardic Jews from Italy used, and it's a date-based recipe with honey. We're going to be making a Moroccan recipe, and the Moroccan families serve truffles. The Ashkenazic Jews typically used an apple-based recipe because the ingredients were readily found in Europe. This recipe is the most commonly one used in the United States. And the last recipe we're going to be making is an American Nouveau recipe, and personally it's my favorite one. It's made with strawberries, which is very, very different. We'll talk about this one when we actually start to prepare it, and you'll learn a little bit more about that. Let's get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the apricots first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut each one in half, and then I'm going to cut it 2 more times so that we end up with 6 pieces. Okay, this is a very easy task. And if you have young children, if you want to give them a plastic knife and ask them to help you with this, or grandchildren, I am sure that they would love to help out. Just make sure that they understand that even though it's a plastic knife, it can still be sharp, and they need to learn some good knife skills. Next ingredient are the dates. I happen to have dates with pits in them, so we're gonna have to cut the pits out. Dates are very, very sweet. Nature's candy, and you can take the pit out very easily. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay them down so that the flat surface is down on the cutting board. It just makes it a lot easier. Whenever you cut something that has a flat surface after you cut it, always lay the flat surface down, and then you can cut much easier. Be aware some dates will still have little stems in them, so you don't want to include that in your haroset. That will not be tasty. And that was actually the pit. That was all the way up at the end. All right, let's lay that down. And one more to go. Okay. They are sticky, so you have to be careful with your hands that you can pry them off and you can get your hands off of them. All right, now that I've laid them down, I'm going to do the same thing with these dates that I did with the apricots. And I'm going to cut them into a few pieces. When I put them into the blender is not going to be aware that they have been cut. Unfortunately, it's not like the apricots where they come apart in little pieces. These are going to be stuck together. But the blender will still do a very good job of chopping them up. Here's the last fruit. I'm not going to dump it out on the cutting board. Instead, here's my blender. I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to dump in the raisins. I'm going to dump in the dates, and I'm going to dump in the apricots. And we need to have some honey. Now, a little tip, when you do anything sticky, like honey or syrup, you want to spray your measuring spoon with some cooking spray so that the honey will slide out easier. If you don't do that, you can see how very, very thick the honey is, and you'll have a really hard time getting it all out. Using the cooking spray, let's see if it'll slide out, just as I hope and expect. All right, here we go. And let's see if this is just gonna pour right out. All right, and then I'm gonna dump in some almond meal, some ground almond meal. All right, and you can see how it looks. So the ingredients we have in there are the dates, the apricots, the raisins, the ground almond meal, and the honey. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going over to the blender, and I'm going to put these into the blender, and I'm gonna put it on chop. Tell it's a nice mixture. And I'm going to bring it over. This is the bowl that I used when I made the previous batch. This is really sticky. And this one is more chopped than the original ones that I made. Nothing wrong with that. It still has a lot of nice texture. And you can see from the color that the apricots have given it a nice honey color. I'm gonna work with what I have in here right now. Let me give it one more scrape with my spatula. This is an unusual spatula. This is a long, narrow one. It's good when you're at the bottom of a jar of peanut butter or mayonnaise. This is a great one for getting into the bottom of a jar. So I thought that it would be good for this mixture rather than using the traditional wide one. In order to make the balls, I'm going to need to have some wet hands because this is very, very sticky. Okay, let me line them up over here. And once your hands are wet, they slide off very, very easily. Sort of like making meatballs. I know when I make meatballs, I either spray my hands or sometimes I'll use a bit of cooking spray. Cooking spray or warm water will help you. Whoops, got away from me. All right. Actually, the first batch that I made that you can see on the tray, on the dish, I did not pulverize it as much. So they still have a little bit more texture in them. Either way is fine. And then there's a little trick also, little tip. Once you finish making these, if you want, you can put chocolate chips and just a little tiny bit of oil, cooking oil, not olive oil, but cooking oil, into a microwave safe dish and put it into the microwave, cover it, and turn the microwave on for about 30 seconds, and then stir your chocolate chips and oil around. You then have a chocolate mixture that you can dip these into. And what you would do is you would use 2 spoons, dip them into the chocolate mixture, lift them out, and put them on a dish that's lined with wax paper, and line them up, and then you have chocolate haroset covered balls. And I can tell you that they will be absolutely delicious. Right, and what I'm doing now is I'm just forming them into smoother balls, just to give them a little bit better shape. All right, and then I'm going to take my cinnamon and sugar mixture. If you're going to make your own cinnamon and sugar mixture, be aware that you need probably about 5 times to 6 times the amount of sugar that you need for more than the cinnamon. Cinnamon in excess can have a very, very bitter flavor. It's a delicious flavor when mixed with sugar, but not too much. You don't want to overpower. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll these around gently in the cinnamon and sugar mixture. And that's exactly what I did over here with these. All right. Easy enough job to do. Do it very gently. And if you have your bowl deep enough, then you won't be sprinkling sugar and cinnamon all over your counter. So don't use a flat dish. You don't want to have a mess of cinnamon sugar to clean up from your counter. And we have one more to go after this. And remember, if you want to chocolate dip them, that would be an extra special treat. And here is the Moroccan Sephardic truffle ball recipe. All right, I hope you like that, and I hope that you'll consider making it for Passover. Our next recipe takes us to Italy, and it's a pear haroset recipe with ground nuts and figs. And it also has lemon in it. So let's get started with this. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the figs and we're going to cut them. The figs have got little ends on them. Sometimes they can be a little tough. And I'm looking particularly at this one. This is tough. So you definitely want to cut the end off. All right. I like using a garbage bag. I have one that I attached to my cabinet next to me so I can just drop the items in there. So remember what I did before with the apricots and with the with the dates. I cut them in half, easiest thing to do first, and then cut them into 6 pieces. Again, a good activity if you have children or grandchildren and you want to include them, and give them a plastic knife and teach them some good knife skills. And I guarantee you it will pay you off having your children in the kitchen with you. I know that my children were always in the kitchen with me, my son and my daughter, and my grandsons enjoy being in the kitchen with me. Unfortunately, they're in California right now, and I haven't seen them for a year, but when we're together again, they will definitely be cooking with Grandma. And now we have the ground almonds, so I'm gonna put them into the bowl next. And then the next one is going to be the apple. This is the Granny Smith apple before. I have peeled this Granny Smith apple. So now I'm gonna cut the Granny Smith apple in half. And in half again. And very carefully take the middle section out. A good knife is always important. And this one calls for finely diced apples. So I'm going to cut this into small pieces, about the same size that the figs were, because when you make a recipe that has chopped food in it, it's nice when all the pieces of the food are about the same size. So this is about the same size as the dried figs that I already cut up. All right. Can you use a whole apple? Absolutely. There is no hard and fast rule when it comes to making haroset with the amount of ingredients. So if you would like to cut this up and put that in there, absolutely. Now the next ingredient is an unpeeled pear that we're also going to cut into small pieces. All right, with this is my way of cutting it, either side. And then I go around, and I'm going to bend it a little bit to go around the bottom. And then this way, we have avoided using the inside where the seeds were. So just like the apple, oh, I have to cut off the bottom. We definitely don't want to have that bottom part in there. And I'm going to cut this just like I did with the apple and the figs, about the same size. And here are the apples, the pears, and the figs, and the ground almonds. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some cinnamon to this. Add about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Again, cinnamon is delicious when used in the proper amount. When you have too much, it makes things bitter. So you can always add more cinnamon at the end. And I'm going to be stirring it in before I add the other ingredients so that it's incorporated. When you start to add honey, because it's so viscous and thick, you're not going to be able to stir all the ingredients around as well because it's going to clump up. So this way we have this mixed in very, very nicely. The next ingredient that we're going to add is the lemon zest. Now I've already zested some of the lemon, but I want to show you, for those who are unfamiliar, how easy it is to zest a lemon or an orange or a grapefruit. You simply hold it tightly in your hand. This is my zester, and you put it down. I do it at an angle. You can also do it straight up. You don't want to get any of the white part, that's called the pith, interesting word, into your mixture. And here you've got the lemon zest. Now the recipe also calls for lemon juice. So I'm going to add the lemon zest. And this has a tendency to clump also. So I'm going to add this before I add anything else so that I can mix it around. I want you to know this is so fragrant. The zest of the lemon has got so much flavor and such delicious perfume, flowery perfume. You can never zest an orange or a lemon or a grapefruit or a lime after you have cut it. That's why you have to use the item, the fruit, zested before you cut it. Otherwise, you can't zest it. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna just squeeze this right in. There are a lot of different products on the market that you can use to squeeze your juice. I have an electric one that I use for making grapefruit and orange juice, but this is one that's very handy when you're just doing a very small amount. And what I've done is I'm just kind of constantly picking it up and moving it around, just in case a different angle will allow me to add pressure and get some more juice out of it. And you can see that there's still more juice that's coming out. All right, I'm gonna stop there and I'm gonna stir it around. Not only will the lemon give it flavor, but it's also gonna draw out the juices. And I can see in the bottom of the bowl that there is juice that is already starting to form from the apples, but I'm continuing to mix it. So you may not be able to see it, but there definitely is juice that's forming, that's coming out from the apples and from the pears. Okay, the next ingredient is, let's see, we have the cinnamon, is the honey. All right, and I saved the honey for the end. And I'm gonna add a good dollop of honey. You know what, in fact, I'm not even gonna measure. I am just going to give it a good dollop of honey. All right, that's a technical baking term, you know, cooking term, dollop. There's another good technical term, a glug. So when you add olive oil or oil, you're adding a glug of oil. Dollop is another one, glug and dollop. Good terms. And there, oh, there's one ingredient that we haven't done yet. Let's see, we have the nuts, we have the figs, we have the pears, we have the apples, we have the cinnamon in here, we have the honey, we have the lemon, and here's the next ingredient. This is the grape juice. Many recipes call for wine. If you prefer to use a sweet red wine, that's fine. If you don't wish to use that, you want to use grape juice, which is what I'm using, absolutely use that. Again, there really are no hard and fast rules when it comes to ingredients for making haroset. And here is the finished Italian pear haroset with ground almonds and figs. And this will tighten up a little bit. This has got a lot of juice from the grape juice in the bottom, but it will tighten up a bit as it sits in the refrigerator. If you want to make your pieces smaller, by all means do that. And we're going to put this aside right now. And here is the Italian haroset, our second haroset dish that we're making today. Our third recipe today is not your usual traditional haroset recipe from Europe. And as I said earlier, it comes from Central and Eastern Europe because most of the ingredients were readily available. It was apple-based. So what we're gonna do is we have apples, apricots, a mixture of dried fruit, grape juice, and cinnamon. All right, so let's start like we've done before with the apricots. I think there's a theme going on here. Have you noticed that all of these recipes have apricots in them? I'm cutting this a little bit finer to make it an easier recipe to spread on your matzah rather than bigger chunks. In this bowl, I've got a mixture of blueberries, cranberries, cherries, and raisins, and I'm going to put them in. And I'm going to take my spoon and I'm going to mix them around, all right, just so they get a little mixed together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my apple and I'm going to grate it. I like to use a box grater. This is not an activity for little hands to do. I think this is a little dangerous for them, so you definitely need to have grown-up hands doing the apple. And it's okay if it turns brown. You know, apples left out without lemon juice on them will readily turn brown, and that's perfectly okay because the haroset is supposed to remind us of the bricks that the Jewish people, the slaves, made for Pharaoh's buildings. So those bricks were definitely brown. So this mixture will turn brown, and part of that is because it also has the grape juice and the cinnamon in it. All right, I think that's about all I'm gonna get out of this. I'm making just a smaller amount than I would for the Seder. So for the Seder, you definitely can use more than half an apple. And I can see there's apple juice all over my cutting board here. This is definitely gonna be quite a juicy recipe. So we have apricots and blueberries and cranberries and apples, cherries, and we're gonna add some cinnamon to this deliciousness. That's another cooking word, deliciousness. All right, good sprinkle of cinnamon. Yum, that smells so good. That cinnamon really enhances the flavor. And I can see the apples are already starting to change color and they're looking a little tan. And I think that's not because they're exposed to the air, so that's not happening yet. I think what's happening is they're absorbing some of the cinnamon. And then I'm gonna add some of the grape juice to it. All right, let me give that a stir. And this will absolutely blend together. This is, I will give credit for this recipe to my daughter Allison. She took the original haroset recipe and decided to enhance it. And this is our family recipe that we use. We actually use two recipes. We use my strawberry one, and we use Allison's enhanced, not so traditional, not your usual traditional Eastern European recipe. And this is what it looks like. Now, it will stick together when left in the refrigerator, make more of a paste kind of a mixture. Let it sit overnight so that you have the best flavors. Keep it in the refrigerator. And this will keep, when made in a large quantity, for the entire week of Passover. Actually, with my husband in the house, it doesn't stay for the whole week. It's gone in a few days. He loves to put it on matzah. And this is not your usual traditional Eastern European recipe enhanced. This recipe is called American Nouveau, and it's a really delicious recipe. When I first saw the recipe, I thought it was a little bit strange because it has strawberries in it. And I'd never seen or tasted a haroset recipe with strawberries. But if you decide that you're going to make this, once you taste it, there's no going back. You will love this recipe. This is the recipe I use every year with my students in the Talmud Torah. And it's great for little hands because they love to take the strawberries using plastic knives. We cut them, and then I even give them the dried cherries so that they can cut them in half. And then we have a lot of fun putting them into an enormous mixing bowl and mixing them all together. Let's get started. I've already chopped up some of the strawberries, as you can see, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So grasp hold of the leaves and just pull. Now you can either cut straight across, and that's what I have my children in school do because it's a lot easier than telling them to go into it and cut it like this. But this is what I do when I'm at home and working in my kitchen. I use a very sharp knife and I take the center out, and then I turn it into a math lesson for my students. I ask them, what happens if we cut it into two pieces? What do we call that? So invariably I get halves. They've learned the word half. And then I say, what happens if we take each half and we cut it again? And they know the word quarter. So a little bit of a math lesson there for the students. And I'm cutting them in halves. And then I can even go a little bit further because the more you chop, and my students do like to chop, they will make the most itty bitty pieces. That's another technical cooking word, itty bitty pieces. And that's fine because the smaller the pieces, the more juice it gives off. And it just makes it easier to put on your matzah. I cut up the strawberries, and you can see how easy it all comes together. The next thing we're going to add to our mixture are the cranberries and the cherries. Beautiful red color, and the strawberries are really making this extra specially delicious smelling. And then now we're going to add some cinnamon to it, And I'm gonna take the lid off and I'm gonna measure a generous half teaspoon of cinnamon, a very generous one, not quite a whole. Now, if you're using the whole 16-ounce box of strawberries, then what you'll want to do is you'll want to add an entire teaspoon of strawberries. But I just took 4 enormous ones out of the box. All right, all mixed together. And now I'm going to add the honey to it. All right, here we go. We're using my technical cooking term. I'm going to add a nice glug of honey. I'm going to go around in a circle so that it's already started to mix into it because it's already gone around. And I'm going to mix this together. And what will happen is the strawberries, as they sit, will give off their juices. And this becomes, oh, the smell is intoxicating. This really becomes a nice sticky recipe to put on your matzah or your matzah crackers to enjoy. All right, so here is our strawberry one. And again, this gets better sitting in the refrigerator covered. You always want to cover all of your haroset recipes as they go into the refrigerator. That will make them stay moist and they won't get dried out. The longer they sit in the refrigerator, if you can make it the day before Passover, before the Seder, or early in the day, it will only enhance the flavors. I hope that you will have some ideas for enhancing or making your haroset, whether it's the first time, the 5th time, or the 25th time. I hope that you have gotten some very interesting ideas on how to make haroset from around the world. So we've now concluded our demonstration of 4 different haroset recipes from around the world. The United States with the strawberry haroset, the Italian recipe with the pears, the not your usual traditional haroset recipe with apples, and the Sephardic Moroccan truffle recipe. I hope that you will consider trying 1 or all 4 of these recipes. And if you do, I hope you enjoy them as much as my family enjoys them. I think this year we might add a couple of new favorites to our collection of haroset recipes which we use. Happy Passover, Chag Pesach Sameach to you and your family and to those that you share the Seder with. I hope you've enjoyed watching and I hope you'll enjoy trying some of these delicious recipes. Thank you for watching.